In today's first reading from the prophet Ezekiel, we hear about trees and how they are an image of God's care for his people. God promises to plant a tender shoot on a high and lofty mountain, a testament to his power and his majesty. The tender shoot, of course, to the people of Israel, but you might think of tender shoots from your own life, hopes that you have for your studies, for your children, for your loved ones, projects you're trying to get off the ground, personal demons you're working to overcome. God's promise speaks to you as well. He can show his strength and majesty by bringing your plans to fulfillment. Of course, things are not always that simple, and neither was the relationship between God and Israel. Our pettiness, our pride, our folly gets in the way. We can try to force God to work on our terms instead of working on his. The image of a tender shoot then has a second meaning. It's not just a symbol of a fledgling desire on our part. It's also a symbol of flexibility, of being open to change, to God's care, to personal growth. Read in context, Ezekiel describes this process as God taking a shoot from the top of a grand cedar tree and planting it in a very different setting. Growth comes at the price of reorientation, of letting go of the familiar and embracing new frameworks for the realization of our hopes and dreams. So let's imagine what it's like for the heart's desire to sink its roots into a new reality. Consider the story of Anne Sullivan. Born into poverty, she lost most of her vision when she was 5. When she was 8, her mother died, and her father abandoned her and her siblings shortly thereafter, and was then sent to an institution to be raised where she was subject to all sorts of abuse. Given her own reflections, her great desire, her hope, was to be educated, to be loved, to see. Perhaps you've never heard of Anne Sullivan, but you probably have heard of her pupil, Helen Keller. From one angle, you might say that Anne's dreams and desires withered before she could ever blossom as a person. She regained some of her sight, but then she lost it again completely for the rest of her life. And one can never replace one's parents or the love of one's family. But from another angle, you might say that God redirected Anne's desires away from her own life and into the life of another. Anne was the key that unlocked Helen Keller's potential. Put together, they both flowered. Anne's tender shoot became the majestic cedar of Helen Keller's brilliant life. Few of us, if any, here have faced the hardships that Anne Sullivan once did as a child. Yet all of us have dreams and desires, some that have been fulfilled, others that are in process, and others, like Anne's desire to see, that will never come to be. You might be tempted to measure your success on your own terms or by comparing yourself to others. We all do it. Or you might ask how these desires of your heart might have their endpoint not in you, but in someone else, someone only God could put in your path. How might God take these desires and put them to work according to his plan? When our tender shoots, our hopes and desires lead us away from ourselves and into the well-being of others, goodness flows. Small interactions generate big outcomes. You probably know this scene from the life of Helen Keller when Anne teaches Helen the word for water by just pumping water over Helen's hands. A simple gesture, but for one person, a revolution. The mustard seed is the smallest of seeds, but once sown, it springs up and becomes the largest of plants. It's highly unlikely that any of us here will change the world. I don't think there are any Napoleons, Caesars, or Genghis Khans among us, thank God. But you can change the world for one person. For the parents with us today, especially the fathers here present, you know the power of this truth. To bring into the world a child is like the parable of the mustard seed. From just a few cells comes a person with a personality, with a history, a soul. And the care, protection, and love a child receives from his or her parents means everything. Without these gifts, a child, like a tree deprived of sun and water, will wither and die. Such is the power of simple acts of love that extend beyond ourselves and into our homes, our networks of friends, our church. We participate in the building of God's kingdom when we allow God to take our hopes and dreams and use them for his purposes. When a woman becomes a mother, a man a father, his life is no longer his own. A child depends on him. But this truth applies to all our lives. We can only find purpose and happiness in this world when our heart's desire finds its end not in ourselves, but in our neighbor.